Yo, what's up guys, it's Brian, and today I want to share with you my DMT experience. It was quite fascinating. It was not at all what I had expected, which is awesome, but it revealed to me a lot of issues that I had and a lot of different ways to change different patterns that now, looking in the future, I can look back and see, wow, I really put this into action, and I really feel like I understand what this trip was showing me. You know, I wanted growth out of it. I wasn't looking to have fun. I wasn't looking to do it as a party thing. I wanted growth. I wanted to understand myself more. I wanted to get past some of the suppressed trauma and all of that. And I feel like my trip really got me there. So the set and setting. This is a few years back, and I was back at my family's home. They live out in the forest, and I'm outside. It's like 8 or 9 at night, and I'm just sitting on a chair on the grass. So I've got my feet planted on the ground, my body in the chair, and I'm with my brother, who in this case was like my shaman, because he had experienced DMT before. He kind of gave me his perspective on it. So I'm in this chair and I start smoking out of a bowl. So I have the DMT in it with some bud, and 2 hits in, and that's when I really am starting to feel completely different. And I can feel every cell in my body just activate, and everything is just alive, and that's when I start noticing these triangle fractals just spiraling out from my chest and my body in all these directions. And I remember this as I was passing the bowl back to my brother so I could get out of my hands. I remember as it happened, I was like, whoa, I could just see so much new light and just all these fractals, and it was so beautiful. And the feeling I felt in my body was just complete connection, complete power. I felt like Goku turning into a Super Saiyan. It was awesome. So what happens is my eyes get super heavy, and then I start kind of seeing out of my third eye. I'm having these visions of me. I'm in this this room with a bookshelf now. It's it appears to be a library. And the best way I can describe it is I'm on the one corner, and in the back of the other side of the wall, there is, say that the ceiling is 8 feet, for example. 7 feet of that is actually a bookshelf blocking that other side of the room. But I could see in that top, say 1 foot, there are these 2 entities in the corners, and they look like cartoons, just really rudimentary lines and shapes, and everything was so just the proportions were just crazy, as they're reaching out to me, their arm would get super long, and things were weird and wacky, and so my first thought was I want to go on the other side of the bookshelf, because I felt drawn to it. And immediately as I had that thought, I had a thought, which the best way I can describe it is it was implanted in me, right? And that's what I feel real telepathy is. It's you're not communicating with your mouth. You don't hear them, you just feel. It's I felt this message that basically said yeah, I have to basically smoke more and do more to get on that other side. So that's what I did. I opened my eyes back up. I took that 3rd hit, and that's when I was just gone. It all clicked. I could kind of, looking back now, that was the breakthrough moment, because, I find myself, next thing you know, I'm in these series of tunnels. And the first one is just beautiful fractals, all this energy and light moving and twisting around me and all this. And so at this point, I'm no longer Brian. I don't have a sense of identity. I am just awareness, just being, it really feels like I'm being moved through these tunnels or these worlds or these structures. And it's almost like I'm on a track, I feel like I'm moving through this place. So, the first one, fractals, beautiful and just, amazing, and just, oh my God, so much is happening that you, literally I can't even think. I'm only reacting, and half the time it's out of just awe or fear, so it's all of that, or confusion. And, the next part, I see myself in this next tunnel, best way I can describe it, this whole world of so hard to explain this, but everything looked like a biological machine, the inside of a body almost, but like it wasn't like normal organs and stuff, but it looked like tissues and things, but there were gears and these things like like pumping and doing all this just it's so crazy. It's so hard for me to like put it into like words. But yeah, just I'm thinking like just gears and stuff that's made out of like blood and tissues and like organs, like very biological. And I remember as I'm in here, I'm like, I see this sprocket, like a gear, and one of the little teeth on the gear, my awareness zooms into it and I see that it's like an actual being. It almost like, if I had to try to explain it, it almost looked like maybe a snail's head, like really long and like maybe like some antennae at the top. And I remember like zooming into it and it's like right here, and I had this, the realization like, oh my God, this is like, this is conscious, this is sentient. That one little tooth on that gear has its own awareness. So I'm like, so everything around me I realize is alive, and there's also these separate perspectives, and that was intense. So the next thing you know, I'm in this next tunnel or this next room, and this one was probably the most, I guess, similar to what I've seen, because this one felt like a building. It felt like it was constructed in some other dimension. I had a little bit more reference experience with this because I felt like I was in this like constructed building with like super high ceilings, and there were these pillars with like these vases and these art pieces on them on each side and things, and just this whole place is like blue and mosaic. So I mean, if we think about like the wall behind us, each little piece made out of like a separate picture or something like that. And it was just so much information to comprehend. I'm assuming probably all those little pieces I've seen are all like separate realities in themselves. But I'm just being pulled through this. And by the time I get to the end of this room, this is where everything just goes like this giant head of this being comes out, and it's like I felt like it was feminine, like I felt like it was a female energy, but it was like a half person, half snake-like being, blue, and again, every single, when you think about like if you look at my face and all the pores and the hairs, I mean, imagine each one of those being like a mosaic piece that all puts together this one image, but yet all these images, all these little pieces are separate, either photos or videos or realities or just whatever. So the overall feeling I remember was just feeling like completely entranced and like seduced by this energy, just drawn into its pure beauty and power. So it opens its mouth, and then this tongue slithers out, and I go in its mouth. Again, I have no recollection of like who Brian is on Earth or what Earth is. I'm just purely just experiencing all this from the state of just consciousness and just like awareness. So now I go into this mouth of this being, and I find myself in this complete void. And when I say void, I mean like there's no movement, there's no direction, because there's no light, so there's no ability to say this is left or this is right. There is no duality, there's just like blackness. And I do remember feeling other spirits and beings around me and moving, and I couldn't see them. I was like stuck. It felt like I was a stone now, because I just experienced all this just craziness, and all of a sudden now it's just black, and it's just complete darkness. So I felt like the other entities saw me or felt me, but I couldn't see them. I could feel them, but I had that sense of like, I'm in their world, I'm in their territory, like I'm not supposed to be here. And, so the sheer terror of this, again, I can't put any of this into time because this whole experience is 15 minutes, but who knows how long it felt like in that moment. Like it could have been days, weeks, months, I don't even know, but it was just boom, boom, boom. And I get, before I know it, I just get, I'm being pulled up into a sky. So now I see that there's a sky now. So I'm being shot up like 300, 400, 500 miles an hour, just like a rocket. And I look back down and I see, I'm seeing where I was coming from, and I see these like huge pyramids. They're super deep, dark, metallic blue, like almost black, but still like midnight blue, just kind of radiating, pulsing this like blue energy. But I mean, only maybe the tops of the pyramids were not covered by this dark black fog or a mist that's covering up most of what would be perceived as above the land. So the tips of these pyramids were out, but I could see that everything was covered in this darkness. So I'm looking down, and like the sheer terror of that was crazy enough. And then I look up to see what's really happening, and those two entities that were in that first room with the bookshelf, the ones that were reaching out towards me, who looked like cartoon characters, they didn't look like cartoon characters anymore, but I knew it was them because I knew they were my guides. I could feel it. I could feel that I was safe in a sense. But I look up and they are angels, and they're flying me up. They're pulling me up. I'm just being rocketed towards the sky, towards this beautiful, everything is white, and it's just this white light all around me. And I'm just like holding on, and I'm like, I remember when I made that first request, I was like, between that and looking down at where I was and what I would say was like hell, I was like, please don't let me go, don't let me go. And they said, you're not ready yet. And then I was dropped, and then I come back into my body on earth. Here I am now, my parents' backyard outside, and I'm back. And it's just, all this happened so quick. So I'm like out of breath. I'm like, I'm like, what do I do? At this time my brother was inside because he was just letting me do my own thing, just giving me some peace. He knew I was out on this experience. And the first thought I had, I really feel like this was from my heart. But my heart was telling me, you're on earth now. You're good. You're here. You know where you are. You're Brian. You're good. Lay down on the ground. Attune yourself to the natural vibration of the earth and just relax. Just let your heart beat. Let's just take a deep breath. So I was telling myself this. So I lay down on the ground. So I start taking nice deep breaths. Feeling a lot better. And this is the most beautiful thing about this experience that I feel, because this goes beyond the actual trip itself, because this is when I'm back in my body. But my parents have a few random little lights out, so even when it's night out, there's still light being projected on areas of the trees and stuff. And it sounds so crazy because this wasn't even part of the trip, right? But I mean, I guess it was, because I'm back. But I look up, and the canopy of the trees and the branches that are above me, the way the light is hitting that canopy, I see this perfect silhouette of just a newborn baby in the fetus position, just in the trees, made up of the shadow and the light. And it was just awe. I was just in awe, because it's one of those things that I'm telling myself, am I seeing this? Or so I asked myself that question twice. I'm like, dude, that's a baby up there. And it was just mind-blowing, and I just felt like it was a miracle in a sense. I felt like it was just this beautiful sign of rebirth.
My model for playing is based on a psychedelic experience also. My model for, when I go on stage, what am I trying to accomplish? Okay, here's the story. There's one time we played, we were playing at the old Fillmore, and it was after Bill Graham wasn't running it anymore. So there was some independent, some hippies, local hippies, rented it for some cause or another or whatever. Anyway, we were playing there. It was but Bill wasn't running it. So it was a little bit strange, and there some weird bands were playing on the same bill with us, maybe at that time, say the Flaming Groovies or something what I mean, some of the bands that were happening back at that time, this the late 60s, or the middle late 60s. So this guy who was like sort of a famous freak and that ran around the scene in those days, comes in and he's got this big birthday cake. He's got this huge big birthday cake. I'm looking at it thinking, that thing has got to be dosed. I just know this sucker. I know it's dosed. I'm looking at it and looking at it and thinking, yeah, I'm sure it's done. And then I said, but it looked good. It was beautiful. This beautiful big. So I thought, I'll just take a little of the frosting here. I'll just take a little snatch. So I took this, and then somebody comes in and says, yeah, we put about 800 hits of acid in that frosting, and I go, oh God, I'm gonna, oh Jesus Christ, I'm gonna be totally fucking wiped out from this, and by this time I didn't really enjoy playing, under the influence of psychedelics, because I didn't have the freedom to quit if I wanted to. It wasn't really that much fun to play when you don't have the option. When you don't have options. So I mean, it wasn't something I was looking forward to. And so I'm sitting there and I'm waiting to play. And we're going, and later it gets getting later and later and later. And I'm coming on. Now I'm going on like, wow, the place is swimming, and I start to overhear people. And I'm going off in this paranoid space. I'm thinking, God, this place is full of mafia guys, and they're all trying to kill me. I got that notion in my head. This guy comes in. He looks exactly like a mafia guy. He says, here, you want something to drink? And I look like, poison. No, thanks. It's like everybody is armed to the teeth. They're all trying to kill me. Okay, so I'm waiting there going, oh shit, this is it. This is my last night on Earth. I'm convinced of this now. Still in this psychedelic roar. And so we're going down on stage, to go play, and I'm going out there and I'm thinking, oh God, what have I done to deserve this? I'm going to go out there and play, and they're going to fucking kill me, So I got it. The only thing I could think of to do was I said, okay, I'm just going to play for my life. I'm going to play for my life. That's what I'm going to do, And so I played for my life, and they let me live. Ever since then, ever since then I thought that works, for me, is to play for my life. So, when I forget what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, I play for my life.
Salvia, in my opinion, is by far the most terrifying experience I've ever had in my life. And I think that anybody who's intimidated of substances usually pictures that substance is what salvia is. And salvia not only takes what their image of it is, but it amplifies it to a point that's beyond human comprehension. Even sitting here trying to describe the salvia experience to somebody who's never experienced it feels like, I don't know, it just feels really pointless. I mean, to me, it's like trying to describe the world to a baby before it's born. The lower doses to me were like the weirdest feeling ever. Really, all of it's really hard to describe, but I think with other entheogens, I was hallucinating with my more sensory. There was more sensory hallucinations, and with salvia, it seemed to be more perceptual. What I mean by that is sensory is like how you actually see things, like your eyes, and your perception is how you process what you see. And salvia wouldn't be so much seeing things with my eye, it'd be how I see the world as it is. And it would be a buzz, definitely a strong dissociating buzz, kind of similar to DXM or any of those dissociatives. But it was very unique in the way it hit my brain, and it would kind of introduce things like I would see my room and be convinced it was like wrapped in plastic, and but I was still in my room seeing it, knew I took salvia. And I would see things like, I would feel like I'm turning into a box, or I'm turning into something on the wall, or I would just feel like I'm hiding underneath like this, some kind of tree stump in a forest with this other guy, and I'm laughing with them and talking about what we're hiding from. And none of it really makes sense. And a voice would enter my mind and kind of reaffirm that everything that I was thinking was the new truth. But I was able to be sober enough to challenge that. There's only a good part of me that believed it. And I could sense that, and I would kind of say, yeah, whatever, and kind of go through it. And I kind of enjoyed those low dose experiences. After I had my first breakthrough into Sally space, where I left my body, I was like, never again. And I've said that about a lot of substances, but with salvia, I kept true to that. I did do it one more time after that, but after the first time, I was just like, oh no. Even with the mind of an addict, I was like, never doing that again. It's the most terrifying thing I ever went through. So I'll go through kind of like the story of it. One day I went out and bought extract, and I came home and I I took a hit, and I had somebody there watching me. And this was back in 2009 when salvia was readily legal everywhere. So this is a long time ago. I'm really old. And, I'm recalling this memory, and I actually was, before this video, I was like, this is going to be hard to recall all this, but it's actually really easy because it's a significant event in my life that I've obsessed about for years. So I smoked the salvia, and I remember looking around and immediately feeling that dissociating effect start to consume me. And it was a very strong buzz, and it was very radiating, and it very much so like fucked my head up and made it where I couldn't think. And I remember just saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, as it was building up. And then there was like a zap. And after that zap, I remember being in, it looked like Star Wars. It was just like this Coliseum and not knowing what was going on. Like at that point, I completely forgot, not only that I did a drug, I forgot I was human. I forgot about time. I forgot about perception, space, matter. I forgot everything that I ever knew. I was no longer human. So I remember being in this Coliseum, and I was like laying on the ground and just very confused. Even like I wasn't necessarily having a body, but I was kind of merged with the floor, and I had eyes coming out of it. And then I remember like the most easy to remember part was slapping and slamming, and I remember it coming in all directions, and it was like I was unfolding in all these different directions, but I didn't identify as unfolding. It was just an experience, and I was just going with it. Like I didn't know what folding was. I didn't know I was human. And then I saw myself unraveling against the wall that had like this window on it, and the sunlight was coming in, and I was just unraveling really rapidly against this wall, and it was like slam, slam, slam. It was like metal on metal contact over and over again, extremely disorienting and unpleasant. And when I finally unraveled, I was this yellow mat on the wall, and I had what looked like like this weird bug head coming out the front of it. It looked like a slug head, and it was very flattened, and it had like, the two eyes poking out of the sides. But it was all made of matte material. I was a mat, and I was stuck against this wall, and my whole body encompassed what this mat was. Even though it was against the corner and curving and everything, I was the mat. And I remember feeling like deep down, like this is wrong. Like I'm not supposed to be aware if I'm an inanimate object. Like, even though I forgot everything, I just felt like the experience I was having wasn't right, and I didn't understand it. And because basically what the experience is communicating to me was I was going to be on this mat, on this wall forever, And I was just like, that's not right deep down. And there was this terror and this need to like kind of scream for help. And when I yelled, it was like I was yelling as loud as I could, kind of like those dreams where you're really terrified and you yell really loud but nothing comes out. That's exactly what happened. And then when I looked down at the ground in this room, there was these two entities there, and it was a father and his son. And basically what happened is they took this disc and they slapped it against the other corner of the wall, and it unraveled into basically a blue version of me. And me and this thing were looking at each other, and I realized that I was a toy that this father bought his son at a toy store. And I started to go into the memories of being bought, and I started to go into being like pulled apart and disassembled, and being all those things, and being on the assembly line with the conveyor belts, like the whole process that a toy would go through in production and sales. I remember going through all of that, and it felt like forever, and I cannot emphasize that enough. The scariest thing about the salvia breakthrough experience for me was there was no beginning or end. It's like I've always been this mat, I always will be this mat, and that's it until I'm demolished or whatever. And it's like you can't challenge it. There's nobody that could challenge it. It's like right now if I were to tell you you're not human, you're a cup, you would laugh at me. Like I'm not even beginning to challenge your belief that you're human. That's how I felt when I was this mat. It was like definite. And I don't remember when it started, why it started, or when it's gonna end. It just was just like being human. I'm not gonna all of a sudden be a cup someday. But with salvia, it's like you turn into that cup, and you're looking at the world, and you're like stuck there, and you're just as convinced as you were when you were human. And that's what terrified me the most, and what I remember the most prominent. After that, that was the most vivid experience I had. But there was a time where I was stuck between kind of like dark matter and reality. I call it the color clear, or just nothingness. And at that point I did have a body, surprisingly, and I was shaking my body to get out of the clear because I didn't want to not exist. And these two entities are standing there, and they were just laughing at me, saying that this kid doesn't know what he's fucking with, or this guy doesn't know what he's fucking with. And they were laughing at me trying to escape nothingness. So then they put me in a challenge with another entity to fight for being something. Like I didn't want to be nothing. I didn't want to be an inanimate object forever. So they pit us against each other where we had to climb over these it was kind of like a mountain, but it was made of, I don't know what it was made of. It was made of energy or something. Because whenever I would crawl or try to get to the top, all these like things would just splash in my face and like smash my face. And it was like boards and all this, and I couldn't get over it. I couldn't even begin to start. So yeah, those are the points I remember the most. And I think that, you know, I came out of it. When I came out of it, it actually was scary because I was kind of halfway in reality and halfway not. Whenever I was getting up out of the bed, I literally got up like 100 times. It's like time stopped or something. Like I know I only got up once, but it felt like I kept doing it. Kind of like the memory tracers I would get from cannabis, but times a million. And I was actually seeing it going on. And when I finally stood up, everything was just gone, like, and I was just standing there, and it was just like I was in complete darkness. And I remember kind of coming to enough to realize something had happened and I was human. And the second I realized I was human, the first thought that came into my mind was somebody just shot me, or somebody like tried to kill me. And my brain is like melting, like I'm dying. And the guy who was trip sitting me, I was convinced that he did it, like he shot me in the head. So I wobbled to the door thinking if I open it and I jump down the stairs or something, that somebody will find me. But I can't sit in here with this guy because he just shot me. And he was trying to stop me from doing this. And while he was trying to stop me, I was saying to myself, like, he really did do it. Like, it reaffirmed it. And then I saw the door, and I could finally see the door, and I was trying to figure out how to open it. I was so gone, I didn't know how to open the door. I didn't understand how it worked. And he was trying to stop me as I was fiddling around with it. And then I looked over at him. I didn't recognize him at all. I remember seeing his face, and he was a good friend of mine, and I didn't know who he was at all. And then all of a sudden a wave came over me, and I was like, oh my God, like I know exactly who you are, and I know I just did a substance. And that's when I held my head. It was very uncomfortable. And did I learn anything from salvia? I would say the only thing I learned was what extra dimensional torture feels like. Because like we have a body and we assume that, like, you know, we talk about physical pain, but there's like a cap where it's gonna, you know, basically the pain is so much that we're gonna die, and then we're relieved. But whenever our soul leaves the body, or spirit, or whatever you want to call it, or whenever we go into this world that's extra dimensional, there's no limit to the pain. There's no limit to the way we could be manipulated and morphed, merged, slapped apart, pain. So after that, I won't say whether or not I believe in heaven or hell, but I always saw going to hell is like the worst slander in the world, and I always made a point to never do that in my life. You know, things like saying fuckity fuck to me is not nearly as bad as saying somebody deserves to go to hell. I think it's the worst cuss word ever, because that's implying they deserve extra dimensional torture for eternity. That is it. For some weird reason though, salvia has always intrigued me, and I think it's my creative mind and my need to face my fears and all that shit. But the reality is, after one time, I pretty much made a really strong affirmation to myself. I would never do that again. And all other substances, I've said that. Well, not all of them, but some of them I've said that and ended up using them again and again and again. But with salvia, I used it one more time to break through, and then I was done.